Patrice Émery Lumumba, alternatively styled Patrice Hemery Lumumba, July 2, 1925 – January 17, 1961, was a Congolese politician and independence leader who served as the first Prime Minister of the Independent Democratic Republic of the Congo, then Republic of the Congo, from June until September 1960. He played a significant role in the transformation of the Congo from a colony of Belgium into an independent republic. Ideologically an African nationalist and Pan-Africanist, he led the Mouvement National Congolais, MNC, party from 1958 until his death. Shortly after Congolese independence in 1960, a mutiny broke out in the army, marking the beginning of the Congo crisis. Lumumba appealed to the United States and the United Nations for assistance to suppress the Belgian-supported Cotonan secessionists. Both parties refused, so Lumumba turned to the Soviet Union for support. This led to growing differences with President Joseph Kasavubu and Chief of Staff Joseph Désiré Mobutu, as well as the foreign opposition of the United States and Belgium. Lumumba was subsequently imprisoned by state authorities under Mobutu and executed by a firing squad under the command of Cotonan authorities. Following his death, he was widely seen as a martyr for the wider Pan-African movement. Early life and career. Patrice Lumumba was born on July 2, 1925 to a farmer, François Talenga Atetshima, and his wife, Julienne Wamato Lamandja, in Onolua in the Katakokum region of the Kasai province of the Belgian Congo. He was a member of the Tidala ethnic group and was born with the name Elias Okata Sambo. His original surname means heir of the cursed and is derived from the Tidala words Okata/Okat, heir, successor, and Asambo, cursed or bewitched people who will die quickly. He had three brothers, Ian Clark, Emile Kalema, and Louis Wanemapine Lumumba, and one half-brother, Talenga Jean. Raised in a Catholic family, he was educated at a Protestant primary school, a Catholic missionary school, and finally the government post office training school, passing the one-year course with distinction. Lumumba spoke Tidala, French, Lingala, Swahili, and Chwilaba. Outside of his regular studies, Lumumba took an interest in the Enlightenment ideals of Jean-Jacques Rousseau and Voltaire. He was also fond of Molière and Victor Hugo. Therefore, he started writing poetry, with many of his works taking on an anti-imperialist theme. He worked in Leopoldville and Stanleyville as a postal clerk and as a traveling beer salesman. In 1951, he married Pauline Opangu. In 1955, Lumumba became regional head of the circles of Stanleyville and joined the Liberal Party of Belgium, where he worked on editing and distributing party literature. After traveling on a study tour in Belgium in 1956, he was arrested on charges of embezzlement from the post office. He was convicted and condemned 1 year later to 12 months imprisonment and a fine. Leader of the MNC. After his release, he helped found the Mouvement National Congolais, MNC, party on October 5, 1958, quickly becoming the organization's leader. The MNC, unlike other parties, did not draw on the unity of a particular ethnic base, but promoted a platform that included independence, gradual Africanization of the government, state-led economic development, and neutrality in foreign affairs. Lumumba himself had a large popular following, due to his personal charisma, excellent oratorical skills, and ideological sophistication. This allowed him more political autonomy than his Belgian-dependent contemporaries. Lumumba was one of the delegates that represented the MNC at the All-African People's Conference in Accra, Ghana, in December 1958. At this international conference, hosted by Ghanaian President Kwame Nkrumah, Lumumba further solidified his Pan-Africanist beliefs. Nkrumah was personally impressed by Lumumba's intelligence and ability. In late October 1959, Lumumba, as leader of the organization, was arrested for inciting an anti-colonial riot in Stanleyville. 30 people were killed. He was sentenced to 69 months in prison. The trial's start date of January 18, 1960 was the first day of the Congolese Round Table Conference in Brussels to finalize the future of the Congo. Despite Lumumba's imprisonment at the time, the MNC won a convincing majority in the December local elections in the Congo. As a result of strong pressure from delegates upset with Lumumba's trial, he was released and allowed to attend the Brussels conference. Independence and election as Prime Minister. The conference culminated on January 27 with a declaration of Congolese independence, setting June 30, 1960, as the independence date with national elections to be held from 11/25 May 1960. Lumumba and the MNC won this election and the right to form a government, with the announcement on June 23, 1960 of 34-year-old Lumumba as the Congo's first prime minister and Joseph Kasavubu as its president. In accordance with the constitution, on June 24 the new government, a unitary system, passed a vote of confidence and was ratified by the Congolese Chamber and Senate. Independence Day was celebrated on June 30 in a ceremony attended by many dignitaries, including King Baudouin of Belgium and the foreign press. Baudouin's speech praised developments under colonialism, his reference to the genius of his great-granduncle Leopold II of Belgium, glossing over atrocities committed during the existence of the Congo Free State. Belgian Prime Minister Gaston Eskens, who checked the text, considered that this passage went too far. He wanted completely to get rid of this reference to Leopold II. The king had limited political power in Belgium, but he was free to write his own speeches, after revision by the government. The king continued, "Don't compromise the future with hasty reforms, and don't replace the structures that Belgium hands over to you until you are sure you can do better. Don't be afraid to come to us. We will remain by your side, give you advice." President Kasavubu thanked the king. Lumumba, who was not scheduled to speak, delivered an impromptu speech that reminded the audience that the independence of the Congo was not granted magnanimously by Belgium. For this independence of the Congo, although being proclaimed today by agreement with Belgium, an amicable country, with which we are on equal terms, no Congolese worthy of the name will ever be able to forget that it was by fighting that it has been won, a day-to-day fight, an ardent and idealistic fight, a fight in which we were spared neither privation nor suffering, and for which we gave our strength and our blood. We are proud of this struggle, of tears, of fire, and of blood, to the depths of our being, for it was a noble and just struggle, and indispensable to put an end to the humiliating slavery which was imposed upon us by force. Most European journalists were shocked by the stridente of Lumumba's speech. The Western media lashed out at Lumumba. Time spoke of a venomous attack. In the West, many have seen this speech as a call to arms, opening up Belgian-Congolese hostilities, plunging the former Belgian colony into chaos. Actions as Prime Minister. A few days after the Congo gained its independence, Lumumba raised the pay of all government employees, except for force public military personnel, causing discontent among their ranks. Many members of the post-independence force public had strong objections to having Belgian-only officers. General Emile Janssens, the army head, told them nothing would change after independence. Soldiers also believed that Lumumba's promises of officer training for Congolese members would take too long to come to fruition. They mutinied in protest in Leopoldville and Thiesville on July 5, 1960, beginning the Congo crisis. The next day Lumumba dismissed Janssens and promoted all Congolese soldiers one grade, but mutinies spread out into the lower Congo. Although the trouble was highly localized, the country seemed to be overrun by gangs of soldiers and looters. This caused a media sensation, which highlighted the Europeans fleeing the country. In response, Lumumba announced over the radio, thoroughgoing reforms are planned in all sectors. My government will make every possible effort to see that our country has a different face in a few months, a few weeks. In spite of the government's efforts, the mutinies continued. Mutineers in Leopoldville and Thiesville surrendered only upon the personal intervention of Lumumba and President Kasavubu. On July 8, in an attempt to alleviate the situation, Lumumba renamed the force public as the Armée Nationale Congolaise, ANC. He Africanized the force by appointing Sergeant Major Victor Lundula to be General and Commander-in-Chief while also choosing Junior Minister and former soldier Joseph Mobutu to be Colonel and Chief of Staff of the Army. These promotions were made in spite of Lundula's inexperience and rumors about Mobutu's ties with Belgian and American intelligence services. All other European officers were replaced, with a few being retained as advisors. By the next day the mutinies had spread throughout the entire country. 5 Europeans, including the Italian vice-consul, were ambushed and killed by machine gun fire in Elizabethville, and nearly the entire European population of Lolyaburg barricaded itself in an office building for safety. An estimated 24 Europeans were murdered in the mutiny. Lumumba and Kasavubu embarked on a tour across the country to promote peace and appoint new ANC commanders. Belgium intervened on July 10, dispatching 6,000 troops to the Congo, ostensibly to protect its citizens from the violence. Most Europeans went to Katanga province, which possessed much of the Congo's natural resources. Though personally angered, Lumumba condoned the action on July 11, provided that the Belgian forces acted only to protect their citizens, followed the direction of the Congolese army, and ceased their activities once order was restored. The same day the Belgian Navy bombarded Matadi after it had evacuated its citizens, killing 19 Congolese. This greatly inflamed tensions, leading to renewed Congolese attacks on Europeans. Shortly thereafter Belgian forces moved to occupy cities throughout the country, including the capital, where they clashed with Congolese soldiers. On the whole, the Belgian intervention made the situation worse for the ANC. The state of Katanga declared independence under regional Premier Moise Tshombe on July 11, with support from the Belgian government and mining companies such as Union Minière. Lumumba and Kasavubu were denied use of Elizabethville's airstrip the following day and returned to the capital, only to be accosted by fleeing Belgians. They sent a protest of the Belgian deployment to the United Nations, requesting that they withdraw and be replaced by an international peacekeeping force. The UN Security Council passed United Nations Security Council Resolution 143, calling for the immediate removal of Belgian forces and the establishment of the United Nations operation in the Congo, ONUC. Despite the arrival of UN troops, unrest continued. Lumumba requested the use of UN troops in suppressing the rebellion in Katanga, but the UN forces were not authorized to do so under their mandate. On July 14 Lumumba and Kasavubu broke off relations with Belgium, and sent a telegram to Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev, requesting that he closely monitor the situation in the Congo. Lumumba had originally desired technical assistance from Belgium and the West, but wanted to avoid taking sides with either the United States or the Soviet Union in the Cold War. By maintaining a policy of positive neutralism, he hoped to create a unique and independent country. Since the United Nations refused to help subdue Katanga, Lumumba sought Soviet aid in the form of arms, food, medical supplies, trucks, and planes to help move troops to Katanga. His decision to turn to the Soviet Union alarmed the West, particularly the United States. On July 24, Lumumba traveled to New York City, where he met with UN Secretary-General Dag Hammarskjöld. African delegates, who had extended the original invitation, suggested arranging a meeting with the American State Department in Washington, D.C. President Dwight D. Eisenhower was on vacation at the time and unable to meet Lumumba. He had a lengthy interview with Secretary of State Christian Herter, much to the chagrin of the Belgian government. Lumumba expressed his dissatisfaction with the Belgian troops in the Congo and requested American aid. Herter reiterated that the U.S. would assist the Congo only as part of a greater UN effort. According to David Van Raybrouck, while staying at the Blair House, Lumumba requested that his CIA liaison send him a blonde prostitute. The request went over poorly. On August 9 Lumumba had a meeting with the Belgian ambassador, Jean van den Bosch. Shortly thereafter Bosch left the Congo under UN escort, and the Belgian flag was removed from the embassy in Leopoldville. The government declared a state of emergency and Lumumba called the army to service, threatening to invade Katanga. In a press conference he stated, "Belgium is destroying us, Belgium is sabotaging us, Belgium is stealing our money, but we will get help elsewhere." That same day South Kasai announced its secession from the Congo. Lumumba immediately ordered Congolese troops under Mobutu to put down the rebellion in South Kasai, which was home to strategic rail links that would be necessary for a campaign in Katanga. The operation was successful, but the conflict soon devolved into ethnic violence. The army became involved in massacres of Luba civilians. The people and politicians of South Kasai held Lumumba personally responsible for the actions of the army. Kasavubu publicly announced that only a federalist government could bring peace and stability to the Congo, breaking the tenuous political alliance Lumumba had with him and tilting the political favor in the country away from Lumumba's unitary state. Ethnic tensions rose against him, especially around Leopoldville, and the Catholic Church openly criticized his government. Even with South Kasai subdued, the Congo lacked the necessary strength to retake Katanga. Lumumba had summoned an African conference in Leopoldville from 25–31 August, but no foreign heads of state appeared and no country pledged military support. Lumumba demanded once again that UN peacekeeping soldiers assist in suppressing the revolt, threatening to bring in Soviet troops if they refused. The UN subsequently denied Lumumba the use of its forces, and the possibility of a direct Soviet intervention became increasingly likely. Deposition. President Kasavubu began fearing a Lumumbist coup d'état would take place. On the evening of September 5, Kasavubu announced over radio that he had dismissed Lumumba and 6 of his ministers from the government for the massacres in South Kasai and for involving the Soviets in the Congo. Upon hearing the broadcast, Lumumba made his way to the national radio station, which was under UN guard. Though they had been ordered to bar Lumumba's entry, the UN troops allowed the Prime Minister in, as they had no specific instructions to use force against him. Lumumba denounced his dismissal over the radio as illegitimate, and in turn labeled Kasavubu a traitor and declared him deposed. He proceeded to Parliament and launched into a debate in which he, in the words of American Ambassador Claire Timberlake, devastated the points raised by the opposition and made Kasavubu look ridiculous. The newly appointed Prime Minister, Senate Leader Joseph Ilio, failed to secure a vote of confidence, which Lumumba won in the Senate on September 8, 41–2, with 6 abstentions. Still, Parliament did not back Lumumba's dismissal of Kasavubu, creating a constitutional crisis. Numerous African diplomats and newly appointed ONUC head Rochewardale attempted to get the President and Prime Minister to reconcile their differences, but failed. On September 13, the Parliament held a joint session between the Senate and the Assembly. Though several members short of a quorum, they voted to grant Lumumba emergency powers. On September 14, a coup d'état organized by Colonel Mobutu politically incapacitated both Lumumba and Kasavubu. Lumumba was placed under house arrest on the next day at the Prime Minister's residence. UN troops were positioned around the house to prevent his arrest at the hands of Mobutu's troops, who formed an outer circle around the residence to prevent his escape. On November 24, the UN voted to recognize Mobutu's new delegates to the General Assembly, disregarding Lumumba's original appointees. Lumumba resolved to join Deputy Prime Minister Antoine Gizenga in Stanleyville and lead a campaign to regain power. 3 days later he fled Leopoldville. With logistical support from the United States and Belgium, Mobutu's troops managed to capture Lumumba in Lodi on December 1. He was moved to Port Frankie the next day and flown back to Leopoldville. UN forces did not interfere. Mobutu claimed Lumumba would be tried for inciting the army to rebellion and other crimes. UN response. Secretary-General of the United Nations Dag Hammarskjöld made an appeal to Kasavubu asking that Lumumba be treated according to due process. The Soviet Union denounced Hammarskjöld and the First World as responsible for Lumumba's arrest and demanded his release. The United Nations Security Council was called into session on December 7, 1960 to consider Soviet demands that the UN seek Lumumba's immediate release, the immediate restoration of Lumumba as head of the Congo government, the disarming of the forces of Mobutu, and the immediate evacuation of Belgians from the Congo. The Soviets also requested the immediate resignation of Hammarskjöld, the arrests of Mobutu and Tshombe, and the withdrawal of UN peacekeeping forces. Hammarskjöld, answering Soviet criticism of his Congo operations, said that if the UN forces were withdrawn from the Congo, I fear everything will crumble. The threat to the UN cause was intensified by the announcement of the withdrawal of their contingents by Yugoslavia, the United Arab Republic, Ceylon, Indonesia, Morocco, and Guinea. The pro-Lumumba resolution was defeated on December 14, 1960 by a vote of 8-2. On the same day, a Western resolution that would have given Hammarskjöld increased powers to deal with the Congo situation was vetoed by the Soviet Union. Final days and execution. Lumumba was sent first on December 3, 1960 to Thiesville Military Barracks Camp Hardy, 150 kilometers, about 100 miles, from Leopoldville. He was accompanied by Maurice Mbolo and Joseph Okito, 2 political associates who had planned to assist him in setting up a new government. They were malnourished by the prison guards as per Mobutu's orders. In Lumumba's last documented letter, he wrote to Rochewardale, in a word, "We are living amid absolutely impossible conditions, moreover, they are against the law." In the morning of January 13, 1961, discipline at Camp Hardy faltered. Soldiers refused to work unless they were paid. Some supported Lumumba's release, while others thought he was dangerous. Kasavubu, Mobutu, Foreign Minister Justin-Marie Bomboko, and Head of Security Services Victor Ndaka personally arrived at the camp and negotiated with the troops. Conflict was avoided, but it became apparent that holding a controversial prisoner in the camp was too great a risk. Harold d'Espremont Linden, the former Belgian Minister of the Colonies, ordered that Lumumba, Mbolo, and Okito be taken to the state of Katanga. Lumumba was forcibly restrained on the flight to Elizabethville on January 17, 1961. On arrival, he and his associates were conducted under arrest to the Brues house where they were brutally beaten and tortured by Cotonan and Belgian officers, while President Tshombe and his cabinet decided what to do with him. Later that night, Lumumba was driven to an isolated spot where 3 firing squads had been assembled. A Belgian commission of inquiry found that the execution was carried out by Katanga's authorities. It reported that President Tshombe and 2 other ministers were present, with 4 Belgian officers under the command of Cotonan authorities. Lumumba, Mbolo, and Okito were lined up against a tree and shot one at a time. The execution is thought to have taken place on January 17, 1961, between 21:40 and 21:43, according to the Belgian report. The Belgians and their counterparts later wished to get rid of the bodies, and did so by digging up and dismembering the corpses, then dissolving them in sulfuric acid while the bones were ground and scattered. Announcement of death. No statement was released until 3 weeks later, despite rumors that Lumumba was dead. His death was formally announced over Cotonan radio on February 13, when it was alleged that he was killed by enraged villagers 3 days after escaping from Kolati prison farm. After the announcement of Lumumba's death, street protests were organized in several European countries. In Belgrade, capital of Yugoslavia, protesters sacked the Belgian embassy and confronted the police, and in London, a crowd marched from Trafalgar Square to the Belgian embassy, where a letter of protest was delivered and where protesters clashed with police. In New York City, a demonstration at the United Nations Security Council turned violent and spilled over into the streets. Foreign involvement in his death. Both Belgium and the US were clearly influenced by the Cold War in their positions toward Lumumba. He seemed to gravitate toward the Soviet Union, although according to Sean Kelly, who covered the events as a correspondent for The Voice of America, this was not because he was a communist, but because the USSR was the only place he could find support for his country's effort to rid itself of colonial rule. The US was the first country from which Lumumba requested help. Lumumba, for his part, not only denied being a communist, but said he found colonialism and communism to be equally deplorable. He professed his personal preference for neutrality between the East and West. Belgian involvement. On January 18, panicked by reports that the burial of the 3 bodies had been observed, members of the execution team went to dig up the bodies and move them for reburial to a place near the border with northern Rhodesia. Belgian Police Commissioner Gerard Soet later admitted in several accounts that he and his brother led the original exhumation. Police Commissioner Frans Verschaar also took part. On the afternoon and evening of January 21, Commissioner Soet and his brother dug up Lumumba's corpse for a second time, cut it up with a hacksaw, and dissolved it in concentrated sulfuric acid. In a 1999 interview on Belgian television in a program on the assassination of Lumumba, Soet displayed a bullet and 2 teeth that he claimed he had saved from Lumumba's body. According to the 2001 Belgian Commission investigating Lumumba's assassination, 1. Belgium wanted Lumumba arrested, 2. Belgium was not particularly concerned with Lumumba's physical well-being, and 3. Although informed of the danger to Lumumba's life, Belgium did not take any action to avert his death. The report said that Belgium had not ordered Lumumba's assassination. Lumumba's execution was carried out by a firing squad led by Belgian Captain Julian Gat. Another Belgian, Police Commissioner Verschaar, had overall command of the execution site. Ludo de Witt found written orders from the Belgian government requesting Lumumba's execution and documents on various arrangements, such as death squads. In February 2002, the Belgian government apologized to the Congolese people, and admitted to a moral responsibility and an irrefutable portion of responsibility in the events that led to the death of Lumumba. United States involvement. The report of 2001 by the Belgian Commission mentions that there had been previous US and Belgian plots to kill Lumumba. Among them was a Central Intelligence Agency-sponsored attempt to poison him, which came on orders from US President Dwight D. Eisenhower. CIA chemist Sidney Gottlieb, a key person in this plan, devised a poison resembling toothpaste. In September 1960, Gottlieb brought a vial of the poison to the Congo with plans to place it on Lumumba's toothbrush. However, the plot was later abandoned, allegedly because the CIA station chief for the Congo, Larry Devlin, refused permission. As Kalb points out in her book, Congo Cables, the record shows that many communications by Devlin at the time urged elimination of Lumumba. Also, the CIA station chief helped to direct the search to capture Lumumba for his transfer to his enemies in Katanga. Devlin was involved in arranging Lumumba's transfer to Katanga, and the CIA base chief in Elizabethville was in direct touch with the killers the night Lumumba was killed. John Stockwell wrote in 1978 that a CIA agent had the body in the trunk of his car in order to try to get rid of it. Stockwell, who knew Devlin well, felt Devlin knew more than anyone else about the murder. The inauguration of U.S. President John F. Kennedy in January 1961 caused fear among Mobutu's faction and within the CIA that the incoming administration would shift its favor to the imprisoned Lumumba. While awaiting his presidential inauguration, Kennedy had come to believe that Lumumba should be released from custody, though not be allowed to return to power. Lumumba was killed 3 days before Kennedy's inauguration on January 20, though Kennedy would not learn of the killing until February 13. Church Committee. In 1975 the Church Committee went on record with the finding that CIA Chief Allen Dulles had ordered Lumumba's assassination as an urgent and prime objective. Furthermore, declassified CIA cables quoted or mentioned in the Church Report and in Calb, 1972, mentioned 2 specific CIA plots to murder Lumumba, the poison plot and a shooting plot. Although some sources claim that CIA plots ended when Lumumba was captured, that is not stated or shown in the CIA records. The committee later found that while the CIA had conspired to kill Lumumba, it was not directly involved in the actual murder. U.S. government documents. Declassified documents reveal that the CIA had plotted to assassinate Lumumba. These documents indicate that the Congolese leaders who killed Lumumba, including Mobutu Sese Seko and Joseph Kasavubu, received money and weapons directly from the CIA. This same disclosure showed that at that time the U.S. government believed that Lumumba was a communist and feared him because of the Cold War. In 2000 a newly declassified interview with Robert Johnson, who was the minute keeper of the U.S. National Security Council at the time in question, revealed that U.S. President Eisenhower had said something to the effect that Lumumba should be eliminated. The interview from the Senate Intelligence Committee's inquiry on covert action was released in August 2000. In December 2013, the U.S. State Department admitted that President Eisenhower authorized the murder of Lumumba. However, documents released in 2017 revealed that an American role in Lumumba's murder was only under consideration by the CIA. CIA Chief Allen Dulles had allocated $100,000 to accomplish the act, but the plan was not carried out. British involvement. In April 2013, in a letter to the London Review of Books, British parliamentarian David Lee reported having discussed Lumumba's death with MI6 officer Daphne Park shortly before she died in March 2010. Park had been posted to Leopoldville at the time of Lumumba's death, and was later a semi-official spokesperson for MI6 in the House of Lords. According to Lee, when he mentioned the uproar surrounding Lumumba's abduction and murder, and recalled the theory that MI6 might have had something to do with it, she replied, "We did. I organized it." BBC reported that, subsequently, Whitehall sources described the claims of MI6 involvement as speculative. Legacy. Despite his brief political career and tragic death, or perhaps because of them, Lumumba entered history through the front door. He became both a flag and a symbol. He lived as a free man, and an independent thinker. Everything he wrote, said, and did was the product of someone who knew his vocation to be that of a liberator, and he represents for the Congo what Castro does for Cuba, Nasser for Egypt, Nkrumah for Ghana, Mao Zedong for China, and Lenin for Russia. Thomas Kanza, friend and colleague of Lumumba, 1972. Political. Patrice Lumumba was Prime Minister of the Congo for 80 days, from June 24 to September 14, 1960. To his supporters, Lumumba was an altruistic man of strong character. He favored a unitary Congo and opposed division of the country along ethnic or regional lines. Like many other African leaders, he supported Pan-Africanism and liberation for colonial territories. He proclaimed his regime one of positive neutralism, defined as a return to African values and rejection of any imported ideology, including that of the Soviet Union. We are not communists or Catholics. We are African nationalists. 2006 Congolese Elections. The image of Patrice Lumumba continues to serve as an inspiration in contemporary Congolese politics. In the 2006 elections, several parties claimed to be motivated by his ideas, including the People's Party for Reconstruction and Democracy, PPRD, the political party initiated by the incumbent President Joseph Kabila. Antoine Gizenga, who served as Lumumba's.
Please subscribe and thanks for watching.